All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the STEM Files. If it's Thursday at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, then it's definitely STEM Files Day. So, welcome back to the STEM Files. We are the voice of STEM talent and Black culture. Tonight's episode, we're going to get a little physical. Well, not physical in the sense of fighting, but we will be talking with someone who is in the physical sciences. She is Dr. Sharah Zaab, and I do apologize for not putting that in the ad too. So I didn't realize you were a doctor, but
No.
we're gonna absolutely we're gonna be talking with Dr. Sharah Zaab. She's a physicist in lithium battery development. It's a little tongue twister for a minute. But we're going to be talking about the impact of physics in Black culture and so much more. So stay tuned for more after this, family. All right, family. Once again, welcome back to the STEM Files. We are the voice of STEM talent and Black culture. We highlight the very best and brightest in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics in the Black and Brown communities. I am your host, one of your hosts, Tariq Muhammad, aka Tariq Cardiac. I'm a biomedical research scientist with a concentration in cardiovascular pathobiology, which is the study of how diseases form in the heart and blood vessels. I'm typically joined by my right hand man, my very best friend, comrade in both business, STEM, and in life. So his name is Jabril Muhammad, aka Jabrain Engineer. He's a mechanical engineer for the United States Navy, where he focuses on naval ship fluid systems. So he works to make sure that those big, powerful ships run effectively out at sea. And unfortunately, he cannot be with us today, but he's definitely here with us in spirit. So I am joined by Dr. Sharah Zaab. She is a physicist in lithium battery development. We're excited to have you on. How are you, sis?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing great, doing great. Welcome to the platform. And as Jabril and I always say, this is not a show. This is a live networking session where scientists get to meet with scientists and the world gets to watch and see how we talk to each other. But we're gonna, you know, talk in a way that everyone can understand. So it's a live networking session slash uh, open dictionary of science, so to speak. But tonight's episode is about the impact of physics in Black culture. We're also going to be talking about what you do in battery development. You're a specialist in that area. And we're going to be talking about family life as well, being of the physics mom, as you ended on social media. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. Dr. Zaab, can you tell us more about yourself, where you're from, and what area of STEM you represent?
Well, I'm so glad to be on your show. I've seen several different STEM files, if you will.
Awesome,
So
awesome.
it's an honor to be here. It really is because this is an excellent platform to discuss STEM in an organic way.
Right.
So I'm very pleased to be on the show.
Yes.
Well, yeah. So I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. That's where I was born and raised.
Okay.
And I like to say, huh?
Jabril is from Philly, so he missed a good one tonight.
Well, I like to say that I am from Pittsburgh, yes, but I grew up in the Homewood Brushton area. Okay, that's what I call my home.
Okay.
I have make sure I identify that as my home because it's not just Pittsburgh. It's the community that I was raised in. I went to school there. Worship there, all aspects of life in terms of a community was spent in Homewood Brushton. So I want to make sure that I identify that in this. So just a little bit about myself. That's where I was born and raised. I attended a George Westinghouse High School, which at the time had a science and math program. And in doing so, I joined that program, and mainly because I had an interest in science, in nature. And I didn't really know which direction I wanted to go with it. So it was an excellent opportunity to familiarize yourself with all aspects of STEM. And
Right.
so that was the reason why I attended that high school. So leaving there, I had a brief stint at Coppin State, but I was very homesick. So I went back to Pittsburgh and finished my degree at the University of Pittsburgh in majoring in physics. And it was an excellent choice. And I'll say that because that's where I grew to love physics.
Mm.
Um, Not that I wasn't introduced to it, right, in a very, very fun and exciting way at Westinghouse, but it was there that I had a better grasp, not only on the topics and the science itself, but just the way that it was presented was very different from the experience that I had in high school. So I'm grateful for that transition, coming back home and really jumping into physics as my major. And therefore, I was able to really foster a love and passion for it, and didn't realize how much that particular aspect of STEM was a part of me the whole time, but it wasn't really presented that way. And so
Mm.
that's what, I guess where sometimes you want to be an engineer, but you don't really want to build things. You want to be
Yeah,
this,
yeah,
but you
yeah.
don't want to do that. So it really encompassed a lot of the things that I enjoyed as a youngster.
So
And
mhm. when
go
you
ahead, sir.
say when you say it's more, it was who you are and you didn't realize it. What do you mean by that? It was who you are.
Well, from and this is something I've been identifying with most recently, is that I have a
All right, family, we got some technical issues. That was kind of weird how she just popped. Usually it's like it blurs up or has some type of sound issue, but it just popped out that time. So, family, bear with us while we bring our sister back on.
Sure what happened. Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
I apologize for that.
Are you
So back to your question where you asked about how it was a part of me the whole time.
right?
So as a youngster, I was very intrigued with nature. And more so, and I mean in the most natural sense, like I was always an observer. So looking at the sky, whether it was in daytime or at night, you know, just always I tell my kids this that I love lying on the grass and just
Right, right.
observing, honestly, just observing nature in its entirety, whether that was animals or whether that was the sky, clouds, all forms of meteorology, even in terms of stars, and just, a lot of the exposure that I was given as a child, and which really helped to foster my love for nature. And so, building off that foundation, it was when I reached college that I realized that physics is nature.
Yeah,
Okay. Essentially, it's been redefined, but philosophically speaking, it is what we study are the laws that govern nature.
right.
Okay. So that's how I identify with physics. It is a way to sort of tap into the majesty that is nature. And
Mm.
so once I had that grasp, that's when I was like, okay, this is for me. And I just ran with it and continue to run with it. So
Got it.
essentially that's how it ended up for me. So after I graduated from Pitt, I went to Clark Atlanta because my advisor at the time was like, you should consider graduate school. And to be quite honest, I was like 21 or 22 or something like that. I was like, I don't really know what I want to do. So, in terms of a career, so continuing learning was that's always right up my alley because I'm always seeking knowledge. So therefore I said, okay, that's a good idea. So let me go ahead and do that. So I went down to Clark Atlanta University, and they have a physics department, and I worked with under Dr. Michael Williams, who was he's over the Center for Microelectronics, and now it's been advanced into like nanomaterials and 2D materials and things like that. And I was very fortunate to acquire a position after graduation at Spelman College. So I spent 9 years at Spelman College as their lab coordinator. So that gave me the opportunity to have a good period of time in academia as I want to say as a problem solver for the physics department. That was my job, was to solve problems for not only students but for faculty as well. And then, but initially it had always been my goal to complete my doctorate. So I was talking about it a while with my husband and my colleague, and I was saying, I really would like to consider doing this and getting, finishing. And everyone was very supportive, but life happened. So I think that's why it took so long. But we finally had, everything was aligned. I'm very grateful for that, to take that step. And I went to Howard University. I started in 2014, and I defended my dissertation in June of 2020. So
wow, congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Absolutely. So this has been a very enlightening show so far. We're only 12 minutes in. But I wanted to just kind of set the stage a little bit. You talked about what physics is to you, like how you define physics. But if you were talking to someone, let's say a random 17-year-old that's not interested in science at all, and you ended up talking to them in public, just having a casual conversation, scientifically, what is the best definition of physics using the scientific basis that it stands on? Like how would you define that in the simplest way possible?
That's a good question. And I don't think I'll deviate from and I wouldn't call it my understanding. I would say that how I define it is very similar to how other physicists would define it.
Right.
My identification as being a physicist is very strongly rooted in nature, in creation, if you will. And so that, for me, is what drove me. But how I wouldn't deviate from that definition speaking to a youngster. I wouldn't say, it's Newton, it's, it's Einstein, it's Maxwell.
Right.
It's so much greater than those that were given the gift to identify
Thank you.
the mathematical terms to have a visualization for what they identify as the force of gravity, or what they identify as the force of magnetism. To me, that's a gift. And if you're a person who has went under a liberal arts school like I did, and you learned physics, we spent, I want to say, a year reading all of the major biographies of those powerhouses, if you will, in physics.
Quote unquote, right.
And what it does is it gives you a different outlook on the nature of their thinking and what led them to their discovery. So it's no different. So and I talk to young people all the time. I mean, I was in academia for years. And then, of course, going into graduate school, you're still in academia. You don't leave, because students, you have to teach them, you have to, engage with them on many different levels. So I've always had that opportunity. And because students always say, I hate physics. I hate it. So I used to make a joke and say, so you hate being able to walk down the street and not just slide all the way down the street and hit a wall. Okay, because that'd be the only force stopping you. So it's just a joke on, on friction as the opposing force that keeps you from sliding into a wall. But they say because it's just, they don't understand it. And how would I say to them, okay, how can you understand something if it hasn't been presented to you in a way where you feel connected to what you're learning? I think most of the time, especially with us in STEM, we identify with what area we're going into. That's something very familiar about African Americans and those melanated people who study STEM. We identify in some way with that area of science or that area of STEM, that it's sort of a personification of who we are, and it helps us to be free in that. So say if I was to say to a young person, they say, well, what is physics? I'll say physics is everything. It's everything around you. And how can you look at a tree and not want to think critically about how it came to be, okay? Or why it reflects a color of green, right? Or why it reflects different colors in the fall. You have, for me, telling you, youngster, what physics is a way to think critically about everything around you.
Right.
To look at it in a way where, if I was to look, as I'm outside, because I can't be in my house, there's too many people. But if I'm outside and I'm looking at the grass, which I did for pretty much my whole life, and I say, okay, why is this grass green? Why can't it be yellow, right? Or blue? Why does it have to be green? And I think if you're a person who wants to engage with your natural surroundings and better understand it, and not only understand it, but utilize it so that it can not only benefit you, but also mankind, right? And preserve it, then you must learn physics. To me, that's just like learning how to brush your teeth. Like, you should know, that's something that is, I teach, for the break I had between defending and this point right now, I got a little bored, if you could believe it, homeschooling children. But I got a little bored because, not that I don't talk to them about physics, I do, but they're a little know-it-all. So they're like, oh, And so I decided, a friend asked me, her son wants to be an astrophysicist. So I said, okay, I could introduce him to astrophysics. So I went through the history of astronomy with him. And I went through it in a very different kind of way. I said to him, okay, think about if we want to identify with the first human beings that were on Earth, your ancestors, and you gotta wonder, they had to identify with their surrounding. It's a precognitive function to survive. So therefore, they had to learn about their natural surroundings. So to me, you understanding your natural surroundings is being a physicist, right? So I don't feel special, right? Because I've been given a doctorate, earned a doctorate in physics to say, oh, Sharah's a physicist. This is so great. And it's not that it isn't great. I'm very grateful. But one thing I've always learned, and this is something, of course, you learn as you mature, is that we're all physicists. Like people say, we're all engineers, right? We're all of these things because precognitively, you come in observing, you come in testing, you come in modifying, you come in collecting data, analyzing, and drawing conclusions. Is that not true? When a child is learning how to walk, they stand up, they get their strength to be able to separate their feet, right? Work on their center of mass and say, okay, if I put my hands out, that'll keep me balanced. All of that's force, that's torque, that's Newton's laws right there. Child trying to figure out how to stand. Then they get mobile and they realize, if I fall, do they stay down? They don't. They okay, I can't walk that way. I got to separate my feet, walk like a penguin to be able
Right.
to get to the next step. So that was one thing I taught him and my daughter, who was also taking the course. And I said, you have to understand it's already in you to look at the stars and wonder, how is that made? Where does that come from? How can I get closer to that? How can I better understand that? And what does it do for me? Because historically, if I may just briefly, astronomers existed. They used the tools that they had. They had the technology,
That's right.
which is your eyes. You were given eyes, so therefore you're able to see the sun rise and set. Okay, if we're going to use that term loosely, right? As a scientist, that sounds crazy, but you understand where I'm coming
Right,
from.
right,
Uh,
right.
but they used the tools. And so I told him it was only in time that they started to improve in the technology that they were then able to gain more understanding and then use that technology for what? For their survival. Okay, I got to make sure that I'm in this cave or I'm in this hut, if you will, before that sun hits this piece, because
Right,
in a minute I won't be able to see.
right.
And
And
there's no street light.
you're right. And you made a very good point, and I'm glad you brought up, astronomy, because there's this off and on debate in the scientific community about the validity of astrology and its background and its setup in science and where it came from. And if we're gonna talk about astrology, which is some both your brother and I were members of the Nation of Islam, and we don't particularly believe in astrology more so as
Hmm.
we do astronomy. And the
Hmm.
reason for that is because of how they've taken that area of science, manipulated it, and made it something that it wasn't. And I was
Hmm.
watching something on YouTube the other day about, the things that those white scientists were taught back then and how they turned around and did things to it and made it
Hmm.
something that it wasn't. So it's very important that we understand, the true definition of astrology and why the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said not to believe in the zodiac signs and anything like that, because
hmm.
those
Hmm.
symbols and those star patterns were taken out of what they truly meant, for
Right,
the
right.
scientists that were studying those observations back then. But
Hmm.
tonight's show, we spent too much time on that particular part. But I wanted to talk a lot about the lithium battery technology. What you
Hmm.
actually do in physics.
Hmm.
So just to kind of set the foundation, what is a lithium battery, and what is your role in developing them?
Okay, so a lithium ion battery, everybody really in a who grew up in the 20th or 21st century
Right.
should know what it is. We have batteries everywhere in your laptop, in your phone. And it's unfortunate that a lot of our, from, age 99 down to our youngsters don't really understand the process of a battery. But
Right.
essentially, a lithium ion battery is a reversible battery. Okay, so that means that the material that makes up a particular side of the or component of the battery is allowed, it basically reconstitutes itself through chemical and electrical energy. And
Mm.
so if you take, for
Hold on.
example,
Wait. Let's slow down a little bit. I'm sorry. So when you say now, like I said in the beginning, this show is for everybody to watch. They're
yes,
watching us talk science, but
right,
at their level. So
right.
let's kind of break this down a little bit. So when you say
Oh, yeah, sure.
reconstitute,
I can give you a great analogy.
yeah. So let's break that down further.
Okay, so if you were to break an egg, okay, if you're making an omelet and you're going to break an egg to make this omelet, can you put that omelet back together into an egg or into its constituent parts, into its components, if you will? You can't go back. So it's irreversible.
Okay.
So that's what an irreversible or a primary battery is. So your alkaline batteries that you would put into, say, a remote, if you're not into rechargeable batteries right now. If you were to take just a regular Duracell alkaline battery, that's an irreversible battery. that's a battery that once all of the pieces are used up, it no longer works. Okay, you gotta get rid of them. But so it has a large number of cycles, but it's not going to recreate itself. Okay, now a lithium ion battery has the ability to have thousands and thousands of cycles. And what the reason being is the material, the active material that creates that chemical energy is able to have a reversible property. So if I take a piece of it out, I can put it back in and it'll still work. So it won't make its way to the other side and just stay there forever. It will actually reverse its pattern and come back. So it starts off at the left side. I'm just going to use directions. If it starts off at the left side and that lithium ion makes its way out of the active material through the other components of the battery, because it's made up of several components, and makes its way to the other side, it will collect. And then when you put that battery into your phone, it'll charge your phone. But what happens to your phone after a while? It'll die, right? Because all of the energy has been used up. So what do you have to do? You supply energy to it by plugging it into the wall where you receive some sort of electrical energy. Once it receives that energy, it's going to make its way back to the other side.
Wow.
And collect itself in its original material. And the cycle just happens over and over and over again. So that's why we call it reversible battery.
Got it. So basically, the lithium is the substance, the chemical substance that's allowing it to do this, right?
Well, actually, the lithium is a part of the material.
Okay.
So there's many different lithium or transition type materials on the market. Since we're talking to a lot of different people in this audience, there's lithium iron phosphate, there's lithium cobalt oxide. So these are materials that have been, the chemistry created this, okay? They don't occur in nature. So the chemistry that created this has a lithium ion in it. And the lithium ion is able, when you apply energy to it, it's able to extract itself from this through electrochemical reactions. It removes that lithium ion. That lithium ion is going to travel through an electrolyte, which we know because the salt that comes off our brow when we're sweating is an electrolyte. What we drink to keep us, hydrated and so forth is an electrolyte. Water is considered an electrolyte. So therefore, it allows that lithium ion to travel to the other side of the battery. And on the other side, that lithium ion is stored. So it sort of hangs out there, right, for a while. And then once it's all charged up, then you're able to use your device. Wow. Once it dies, right, because all the lithium has been extracted and that it has been utilized, right, then it has to be charged up again in order for the lithium ion to go back into that material. I don't want to use the word recreate, but I'll say it has reactions that help it to be absorbed back into that material. And then the cycle happens over and over and over again.
So it's just one big back and forth kind of game that the battery is doing. I like that. That's so I'm in the life sciences, so I don't really go into that particular area of science, but that's
I gotta stop you right there. Because in the life sciences,
no, I'm just saying,
within us.
Yeah.
Well, I understand, but there's a lot of biophysicists that study all of those different components within our body that behave like batteries, that behave like many other, I don't want to say man-made things, but everything is just another extension of nature. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I was speaking,
and that's essentially what a battery is.
Yeah, I was just speaking in the sense of the battery technology itself, like that particular.
Okay.
Yeah, not so much how the chemical reactions function and all that.
Okay.
I'm just talking about batteries, you know. So
Okay.
that was pretty dope. How you explained that. So this question is from Jabril. He asked, how has lithium-ion battery technology grown more efficient over time? In what industry or social sphere does lithium-ion battery technology have the most room to grow, and or the greatest potential for substantial innovation over the next 5 to 10 years? But let's break this down. So the first part of the
Okay.
question is, how has lithium-ion battery technology grown more efficient over time?
Well, essentially, it's grown more efficient because of the materials.
Mm.
Okay. The materials that make up what the cathode side or one particular side of the battery, um, they started basically with lead acid. Like rechargeable batteries have been around since cars. I mean, you have a rechargeable battery in your car right now,
Right.
and they've been in there since, Ford. So therefore, or let me not give him the props, but the brother that assisted him with producing the car,
You
since we
talk
talk about
about the
Black
car,
culture.
right? Right.
Yes. So, so the rechargeable battery's been around for a while. Lead acid batteries are rechargeable, but lead very toxic. Um, the cycle life is very short, right? You got to change your battery. It has issues with heat and cold. So therefore, those are some variables that are issues when it comes to that particular type of rechargeable battery. But the godfather, or not godfather, but the father of the lithium ion battery, John Goodenough, who just received a Nobel Prize, he created lithium, basically all the lithium materials that we understand today. And essentially, these are transition materials that are being used, like iron and manganese, and all of these materials that have really good structure, right? So they're able to be cycled over and over, and they're able to not really change their form too much when that lithium ion is extracted during that electrochemical reaction. And so I will say in that there has been improvement. There's still more to improve, because as a student of lithium iron phosphate, it is a very environmentally friendly active material, lithium material, and but the most commonly used ones that we have out here now are very toxic. So lithium cobalt oxide is, widely used, but cobalt is toxic. So they're leaning, I don't know if you're up on that type of news, but they're moving away from that toward more sustainable and more environmentally friendly materials. So that's essentially what's happening now. The area, I mean, lithium ion batteries are everywhere. They're in your car now. So,
Yeah.
well, not in my car, but in those that have the electric vehicles or
Like
even the hybrids,
Teslas and all
they're
that.
there.
Yeah.
They're there.
Mm.
Where they can grow now, and what I'm seeing, I'm having a very, very interesting conversation with a colleague right now who's dealing with battery storage for the grid. Okay, during the hurricane season, we've all seen how our brothers and sisters in Puerto Rico and a lot of the islands in the Caribbean, they suffer a lot during that season. Their power's out; it's not on for, I'm talking 6 months. We can't go 2 days. They're
Right.
out for 6 months. So
Right.
a lot of research has been done in grid storage for lithium ion batteries as an energy storage device. So that is the direction that it needs to go. I mean, in electronics, in vehicles, it's there. It's only going to advance. But the major area that really needs to be addressed is grid storage. There's not enough data out there on whether or not lithium ion batteries have what it takes to be able to be a major player in grid storage.
Got it. Got it. Well, you kind of answered all three and wrapped up into one. And I'm glad you did that, because I knew because the questions related so much to each other that you were just going to end up answering
Mhm.
all of them in one. But I want to talk about your homeschooling life. You are a mother of you are a mother of six. So
Yes,
fun. Here's an interesting fact about me and Jabril. Both of us were homeschooled, and he was
I could
homeschooled for,
believe it.
yeah, yeah. He was homeschooled from about, I think, second to ninth grade. I was homeschooled from fourth to 10th grade. You know, so we
Okay.
definitely understand that um, that desire to from a parent to educate their own children for whatever reason that the parent may have. So he wanted to know. Um, let me see which question. Okay, let me just start with this one. As a physicist and
Hmm.
homeschool and a homeschool teacher, in what innovative ways have you leveraged your and your children's physical environment to teach them base universal principles of time, space, and more?
Oh, that's a heavy question. um, well, I did. Okay, I'm going to glean from a workshop that I gave on homeschooling.
Okay.
Um, okay, so homeschooling, it's being redefined in so many different ways. Um, but essentially, it starts with your student, okay, or your child. I will speak very briefly. My oldest child is high functioning autistic. So when he was very young, my husband and I saw that, you know, the way he learned, he could never be in a school setting because a school setting is very laser focused on a particular type of learner. So if you're not a visual learner, you know, where someone's writing on the board and you're reading, but you can't identify with what you can read it, no problem. But to be able to process that into a into adding or to the scaffolding of your learning, he may not be able to do or she may not be able to do. But they
Right.
may need repetition. They may be an auditory learner where they need that repetition or what have you, where they hear it. Or they may be hands-on. Like there was nothing I couldn't keep away from my son where he couldn't, he had to touch it. He had to use that particular sense to be able to identify with it and to learn and add to his body of knowledge. So that's the first thing. You have to identify what type of learner you have when it comes to your children. And I just think this is just something parents should do in general. Like,
Yeah.
I have no expectations for my children to learn the way I do. I mean, I learn in a different way than most of my children. But that's who I am and that's who they are. So I would say that's step one. Um, Time and space. It was very challenging. When they were younger, I had a lot of things that were hands-on, and I didn't really press the issue of their reading on certain levels, because I felt like, to me, that type of learning happens organically.
Right.
I speak to my children in a way as if I'm talking to you, as I talk to any person. I talk like this with kids 5, 6. My son's 5. I have another son. He's 5. This is the conversation I'm going to have with him. Yeah, I
Okay.
don't deviate. And
Right.
so, and my husband and I, we engage in this way. So therefore, they're going to take that and they're going to run with that. That's environmental knowledge. So they're going to gain that regardless, and identify in that way and respond and test and then use in that way. They're going to behave in that way. It's just automatic. And so, but I thought that was very important. One thing that I learned from working at Spelman College was that we had a lady, I forget her name. She's at Rutgers, but she teaches physics education. And she came and gave us a workshop, and this transformed my thinking when it comes to children. So she came and said, people say this all the time now because STEM is hot. That's what I tell people. STEM is hot. When I was a kid, I was a nerd my whole entire life. You like science? Oh my gosh. Like, get up on this or that or whatever. And I'm like, no, I'm gonna stick with this right here. But it wasn't very well liked. But it's hot right now, which is great. But what we learned from her was, or what I gleaned from her workshop was, we're all born scientists. Okay. It is society, it's the parents first and foremost that restrict their children from their learning. And I'm saying that I'm just, given that point. It wasn't that per se, but that's what I took from it. I didn't want to stand in the way of anything that they wanted to learn. And to me, that's what people call now as unschooling, a very organic way of learning, where if my child has an interest in stars, then we're gonna start from the ground and we're gonna go all the way to Einstein and general relativity.
Right.
And they may not say, okay, how relevant is that to, say, my 9-year-old who really wanted to learn about stars this homeschooling year? And we went from, what do you think a star is? I took the engineering process with her. I said, what is it? What do you define it? What do you want to learn from it? What do you already know? What do you want to learn? And how can we test it, right? Or create a model or something to test it.
Right.
And she learned a great deal about stars and what they were and so forth. So I try to use each day for them to, of course, learn the fundamentals. Nobody's taking away multiplication or anything like that, but for them to be able to take the time in a day, a school day, go through the fundamentals, and then the rest of the day they spend that time learning about whatever they choose to learn about. So if that is about composting, you can learn a lot from composting. I mean, believe it or not, you can learn about decomposition. You can learn about all the all the insects in nature that aid in decomposition. I mean, it can go on forever.
Right.
I mean, and then you can then go out and create a garden or whatever and put your compost in, test how well this compost works. You can even get materials to test how much nitrogen or whatever's in the soil to take away from nutrients or whatever. So it can go on and on if you give your children the opportunity and the space and the time to learn about the things that are intriguing to them. I even had her write a poem about stars. So it's not like you're taking away from writing or the majesty of poetry and English and history. You're not taking away from it. You're adding to it and making it full. You're not, separating it as if it's some separate, educational process in each subject. It all works together to me, in tandem.
I agree. When my mother was homeschooling us, and I'm sure Jabril can attest to this as well, we didn't have grade levels. We were allowed to learn whatever it is that we wanted to learn at that time. Of course, we learned, we knew what we were supposed to know for our age, of course, but the basis, the foundation of the education wasn't limited by grade level. So even though we were learning 10th grade, we were learning algebra 2 for whatever grade level we were supposed to be in, we were still learning things that we wanted to learn. I was studying astronomy textbooks, different types of medical encyclopedias, the whole nine. That's what I wanted to do. So that's very key, be able to provide an environment where they can learn what they want to learn. And when they tell you what they want to learn, you as the parent can provide them with those tools and resources for them to learn it. So Jabril wanted me to ask you something. So in a recent IG post, right, you highlighted the evolutionary cycle of insects to emphasize that time is a necessity for changing your mindset. Why is time one of the greatest assets afforded to the human being? And what is the evidence that one who respects and utilizes, and what is the evidence that one who respects and utilizes time properly? I don't know if I'm reading that right.
No, I gather. That's a good question. That was an impromptu post because this season, I live in Maryland, so this season it was cicada season, and I've seen cicadas. I haven't, I lived here the time that I've been at Howard, so like 7 years or so, and I've seen a cicada, and I didn't know what it was. Like, what is that? It's not a fly. That's not this. That's not that. So I'm trying to identify what this thing is. And once I realized what it was, I just kind of left it alone. I was focused on, battery. So I have time to think about about a cicada. But this year I had no choice but to think
Yeah,
about a cicada.
I can imagine.
And they were coming, oh, my poor maple tree. They were coming from the root of this tree and
Mm.
just emerging from the ground. And I want to say how important observation is in this very quickly as I gather my thoughts into this question. I have a 5-year-old who goes out in the yard every day, waters his plants, whatever. So there's holes in the ground. I'm walking around looking at the ground, and there's just holes everywhere. And I'm like, where, what? Okay, there's an array to these holes. It's not random. You understand? Like it's such a mathematical equation going on at the root of my tree that I had to wonder what was going on. And so once I understood that they were cicadas, my husband and I had a conversation about the cicada life cycle.
Uh-huh.
And that was it. That was it. I said, I have to go on Instagram, talk about mindset, because that's what I do. I was
Right.
like, I have to say this outside of my home to people who may
Right.
have some interest. So I said to myself, okay, how can I discuss this? So I talk a lot about mindset because people don't realize, and I had to realize this myself. I'm not special in that regard, that society molds you. You don't realize how much it does. And it molds you, it distracts you, it can do great things, but can also do harm. And so what I talk about in on my Instagram page mostly about mindset is having the ability to critically think about what's happening in your life and
Right.
taking a scientific approach to whatever's going on in your life, whatever goals you're trying to accomplish. And I took the cicada as an analogy because I said, okay, its cycle starts as we start as an egg, right? And it makes its way and it goes through this process. We're talking 17 years. That's how they come around. That's their cycle.
That's right.
And I'm sitting here saying to myself, okay, that's a decent amount of time that's spent to molt. They molt about 4 times. So that means there's some real, I wouldn't even, that's not an incremental change. That is a dynamic change within the cycle of this particular insect. And I wanted to use it as an analogy for how you can start somewhere, even with a seed or an egg, right? And you can molt and you can change within a cycle. And in that change, you can become something that you weren't previously, even within that molt, even within that change or within that frame of time as a cycle. And that is what we have to do with our mindset. We want to say, oh, I think this, I think that, but is that how you truly think? Or does someone, have you watched too much television and that's how you think now? Like, can you say naturally that's how you thought about that? So that to me is your mindset. Okay, we have complete control over that, right? If you take the
Right.
time to address your mindset, how you approach your role or your task, how you do that, that has to do with what was imparted in you. So there's a young, very briefly, a lady who's a physicist. I think she's like the first person of African descent in Canada. I saw this when I was in Canada a couple years ago, who just recently got her PhD in physics.
Mm-hmm.
So few of us is ridiculous, and this is all over the world.
Yeah.
Anyway, and so they were like, how did you do it? Like, how did you do it? How did you beat the odds, if you will?
Right.
And she said, because I'm stubborn.
Mm.
I'm stubborn. I wouldn't just roll over. I kept pushing and pushing until I met this goal. And if you talk to any melanated physicist in America, that's what they'll say to you. I wouldn't use the word stubborn. My mindset was governed precognitive to the teachings of my ancestors, genetically from my parents. You understand? All of that was me. And so I didn't see all of that. All I saw was my goal, but that's my mindset. And some people are like, how are you able to do that? You have the power to do that. You could do it. You have to take the time to address how you see yourself, how you see yourself achieving whatever goals you may have, or whatever, particulars that you want to address in your life or as a person, and say, what can I do about that? How can I change that? That all has to do with how you think about yourself, how you think about time, how you think about your environment, and how all of those things govern your ability to reach those goals or to, address those particular personal issues.
Got it. Wow. Yeah, you pretty much answered the next question we were going to talk about. How has physics or studying physics helped you with your own personal time management? You definitely answered that tenfold. But for those who are watching, if you would like to learn more about the STEM Files, we can be reached at the STEM Files on Instagram and Twitter, and the STEM Files on Facebook and YouTube, exactly as you see it, hosted by Tariq Cardiac and Jabrian Engineer. Also, at this time, I want to take this segment to acknowledge our Black business highlight, which is Blocal. It is a national Black-owned business directory, and it's founded by Markeisha Harris, Richmond, Virginia native. She put together this platform to help Black businesses not only do business with each other, but to help our people support them and support what they do and get everything that they need through our people's business. So definitely check them out. It's called Vocal. If you're watching on Facebook, it's in the caption. If you're watching on YouTube, the link is in the description, okay? Also, as well, the Final Call newspaper. This is the flagship product of the Nation of Islam. It is the #1 Black-owned newspaper in the world. And this week's issue is a champion in the liberation struggle. It is about honoring Kenneth Konda. He is a very, very powerful leader in his country. And if you're looking to understand what leadership in a predominantly Black community or country looks like, this is one of the brothers to study. So definitely check it out. Purchase the latest edition of the Final Call newspaper. Just visit finalcalldigital.com. Once again, that's finalcalldigital.com. So we are approaching the end of the show. This has been a great show. I've learned so much about physics, battery technology, homeschooling, time, everything, nature. As you said in the beginning, this is literally a show about everything, So I definitely appreciate your time. As a physicist, and as a Black woman in physics, what would you say to another Black woman or especially a young Black woman who's interested in going into your field? What would be some of the takeaway messages you would give to that individual?
Well, I would certainly tell them that they should, if they have an interest in physics, to make sure that they identify a group within that area of physics where they feel comfortable. So it's really about community when it comes to reaching those platitudes, if you will, bachelor's, master's, doctorate, what have you. It takes a lot to get there. The work is hard, but we don't need extra social issues to address while we're trying to, make those or receive those particular degrees and so forth. So I would say first, make sure you have a community behind you and with you, if that's your family, if that's other sisters or what have you. I would like to use this opportunity to talk about or to mention AWIP, which is African American Women in Physics, that is directed by Dr. Jamie Valentine. So we have a community on Facebook.
Nice.
And all that exists, and we support each other. We use that platform to not only give opportunities to the upcoming physicists, but also to, engage in ways that we can't necessarily do so. And National Society of Black Physicists, that is an organization that's been around for quite some time, where it's a yearly conference. They do a lot of things within the community and engage with physicists early career to emeritus. So a lot that's available to you. I would say just continue to see the beauty within physics and allow that to drive you, because it's within that that you truly achieve something great.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I'm glad you brought up the society, because one question I wanted to ask you, Jabril and I, we have a company that's its primary focus is research and development, and taking ideas that our people have and developing them, as well
Mhm.
as taking issues that we see in the community and making things better for them. So, as a group of physicists, what are some of the top three things, or even one thing that you would see in the community that you all can come together as physicists to correct or solve, especially in the Black community?
Correct or solve? Uh, that's a heavy question. Couple minutes. That's a
This can
serious
be one
question.
thing. Like all I need is
Uh, I would say just basic physics knowledge. A lot of experience that I've had where I've done a lot of outreach, especially through the institutions that I've been a part of, where people just, you ask them what physics is, they have no idea, or they identify it with math or something else. And I think really just the exposure is necessary. If you expose youngsters early on, I have to give all kinds of props to National Society of Black Engineers all the
yes,
way,
yes.
because they start from young. And I know because my kids are Nesby Junior members. So I'm telling
Yeah,
you right now that
girls
that's
all
that's how you deal with it.
yeah,
They've all been in Seek, so the summer engineering experience, they've been in that. So it's important to start with the youth, because if you start there and build the foundation and add to that scaffolding, you never know what may come out of that. The next astrophysicist, or the next innovator of a battery we've never heard of, or a material
right,
that we've never even thought to consider, or what have you, or string theory. Who knows? I don't know. But the
right.
opportunities have to be given, and the foundations have to be laid in order for us to build. That's what's essential.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, this has been a great show. Like I said early on, I've learned so much. We are so happy that you were able to take some time out of your very, very, very big and occupied schedule to join us on the STEM Files. I mean, when I spoke to you earlier today, and you told me that your mother's six, and you killing it right now, not only in STEM but in motherhood. So we definitely
I
love to.
appreciate that.
Absolutely, we appreciate that. Speaking of motherhood, your brand, the way you brand yourself on social media, I thought was pretty cool. How can people contact you, or reach out to you for information?
Again, my handle on Instagram is at physicsmom8. I also have a STEM Battery Lab Instagram account where I discuss all things lithium ion battery. And this is important.
Right.
This thing is off and running like a lightning bolt. And quite frankly, if
Yep.
African Americans and melanated people don't jump on this, you are going to be behind. So I try to keep the community informed in that way, and teaching them about the fundamentals of batteries, the fundamentals about electric vehicles, and so forth, to understand that this is the direction that the world, not America, the world is going. So therefore, it's important for us to have a handle on that. The energy, DOE is given billions of dollars toward this type of research and development. So it's important for us to have a stake in that. Um, I'm also on Facebook as Physics. You can look me up there. And I also have a consulting company that not only deals with educational services, physics consultation services. I'm on LinkedIn. You can look me up there. And I do services not only in education, but also in battery research and development.
Beautiful, beautiful. And for those who can get, if unfortunately we didn't put those links in the description, but if anyone
Sure.
who's watching wants to take advantage of our sister's consulting services,
Mhm.
learn more about battery development and battery research and development, definitely send her an email or a message at her Instagram or an email at her email right here below. Um, and yeah, that has been the STEM Files. Is there anything you would like to close out with?
Well, I just want to say thank you so much for having me on the show. Like I said, I watch it regularly. It's always been very
Thank you, thank you.
informative. It's an excellent platform for us, not only as STEM individuals, STEMinists, if you will, but also as African Americans who need an outlet to discuss these issues and to bring the community in on the necessity of how important STEM is in the community.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. And that's pretty much what we're all about. And I'm glad that we have someone on the show who can tell us that we're doing the job that we set out to do. So thank you so much. And once again, family, for those who would like to keep up with our content, stay tapped in with what we do. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at the STEM Files, and on Facebook and YouTube, the STEM Files. It's exactly how you see it on the screen. Don't try to change it. If it just follow exactly what you see on the screen. And it's hosted by Tariq Cardiac, biomedical research scientist, and Jabrin engineer, mechanical engineer. So we are the STEM Files, voice of STEM talent and Black culture. Thank you all for tuning in, family. Peace.
Peace.